Okay, so I was able to go in and get those improvements from the scope creep ideas worked in, and I took a little while and cleaned up the wiring schematic. Uh, yeah, and then I exported them and went ahead and just put them in my own documentation. So we'll just look at them here. So I was able to get that cleaned up, a little bit of trial and error, trying different locations, and I think I found something that's fairly easy to follow all the connections on. And then the PCB diagram down here, uh, went ahead and used that little tool I have that we saw, and I realized I should put some color buttons here. That wouldn't be hard to work into the script. Just put some color buttons and a little bit of JavaScript command to click and change the colors on these. That's probably something that's still missing, so I'll get that soon. But see the PCB diagram. Let me turn some of these layers off. Turn the words off and the solders. That'll work. So as you can see, a little more complicated than that first version, but not too bad. And I was able to get everything routed with only 2 spots where it has to cross to the other side of the board. Everything else is able to make its entire route without crossing sides. It's kind of like a puzzle. I just started somewhere, and at first I had lots of crossings, and then I just went to each crossing and reconsidered that section and reconsidered everything in that section until I was able to reroute it and just. So I did the whole thing, and then I come back and just did a little bitty pieces of it at a time and cleaned it up, and was finally able to get it with only 2 crossings. So everything's routed and connected, and I went ahead and we're getting ready to look at the test video, but it's already ordered and on the way. So while we wait on that, we're ready to start doing the PC side scripting. But a couple more things in the video about the changes here first, because along with that other tool we saw over here in Blender is the a 3D model of it. Basically, something that we'll be able to use for a CAD, do the CAD designs. And I already have most of these components in the actual sizes downloaded from manufacturer sites. The ones I don't have, I'll either find or put together so that we're ready to start working on the CAD design for a case for it once we get the code working. And over here, you can see the traces. Again, I just set this up so that the layers can be turned on and off. And a little more complicated than the first design, but again, there's only 2 little spots that had to cross the side. Had to cross here, and then right over here were the only spots that had to cross. And then this tool that I created is very, very useful for giving it a thorough inspection before ordering it from the factory. But everything's ready, and as far as getting the case ready, I have most of these components. Yeah, you can just download CAD files from a manufacturer and have the exact piece, everything set to the right size. And if not, just do the CAD stuff yourself. If you're familiar with that, that's kind of a necessity. If not, what we'll be doing is we'll have all this set up, and then we'll just go over a plastic case, which is fairly easy CAD. So this video playlist, when we get there, we'll have some kind of getting started in CAD stuff. But now that all that's ready, all the digital planning, designing, documenting stuff, let's go look at actually hooking it up and testing it. Okay, so real quick here, place the order, and around 11 o'clock last night, which is definitely a different time in China. I think that's around 11 in the morning in China, so it was a work day. So I placed the order, and in about 5 minutes, I got an email said they checked it, we're moving it into production. So come back the following day and sign in their site here and go to order history. And one of the many things I really like about JLC PCB, aside from they're the ones that created the Easy EDA converter, is the tracking information. We can track the production progress. So if I come over here on this order and hit production progress, I just ordered it last night and it's already 38% of the way done. And this will go through here and have these neat little videos where you can kind of see their factory and see the process going. So yeah, the first thing, a chemical gets sprayed on there, and then copper sticks to where the chemical sprays. Or there's two methods. There's either that or the reverse of that, where a chemical gets sprayed on there, and then the grooves are cut, and then copper doesn't stick to where the chemical is. But these little videos showing the different steps of the process and how it all goes together. I like how, whoops, gotta watch out for those play buttons. I like how they will let you track the progress on the way through the factory, and then once they ship it out, obviously there's normal tracking to keep track of it, so you know exactly how long it's going to be. So I just wanted to show you that. Just go to your order history and you can track the progress of it. So let's now let's go look at the device real quick, or the testing devices, so that they're ready to plug up whenever this comes in.
Okay, so to get this joystick in here, I had to make a few slight modifications. So when I ordered these, I'm down to the last pin here, they came with pins installed, which I usually try to avoid that so I can install the ones I need. And you can see it came with an L-shaped pin, so it put the joystick vertically out of the breadboard, which I'm not really a big fan for. But apparently these had pins installed, so I have to remove these pins and solder in the ones I need. So I thought I would do a quick cap on that. So obviously when soldering, be very, very careful. You need something like this. This is called a helping hands tool, and it holds your pieces securely. So one thing is make sure the piece is secure before you bring the soldering iron in. So to remove pieces, I tend to use an old junk bit that's wore down because I just need to heat things up. Don't have to be too precise. And to apply solder, we'll see that in a moment. Is that showing up? No. To apply solder, I've found a temperature of about 653 works pretty good. And to remove solder, I up that to about 760, so it's a little hotter. And on PCBs, whoops, didn't mean to bump the gooseneck there. I like to use these little syringe things. I'll try these first, and if these don't work, there's something called solder wick that you can just place on there, and it will kind of soak up some of the solder. So this is to get a lot of the extra solder off. Just a little syringe looking thing. And what you want to do is bring the soldering iron in and touch it to the piece very carefully. So you never want to melt solder directly with your iron. Always heat up the piece the solder is going to. Then once that's loose, the little syringe will suck the excess solder out of there. And there's still a little bit, so it'll lock back in place. So then grab it with some pliers and heat it back up to remove that last bit of solder, and it'll slide right out of there. And that's the process I go through to remove pins if needed. So now with those out of the way, I'll do just a little bit of cleanup here just to make sure that's clean, and we'll solder in some pins that come straight out so that the joystick will stand vertically out of the breadboard. Okay, so here's the new header pins I want to use. That way that'll sit straight into the breadboard. And to solder things, you always want to make sure it is all secure and ready to go to begin with. So we'll put those in there and then set it up securely in the helping hands tool here. Lock that in there so that nothing's moving. And now to solder it, bring in the soldering iron and some solder. And you never want to heat the solder directly. What you want to do is use the soldering iron to heat up that piece of metal where that's going to go. And to make sure there's a good connection, it's a good idea to tin the tip, which means just put a little bit of solder on there. That way there's like a little bubble of liquid that wraps around that metal and heats it up evenly. And then you bring your solder in from the other side. and use the piece of metal you heated up to melt the solder, not the tip. And then remove the solder, then the iron. So bring your soldering iron in, let that piece of metal you want to hold in place get hot, then bring the solder in, allow the metal to melt the solder, remove the solder, then remove the iron. So I'll go ahead and solder up these last couple here. The same process, just when you're ever soldering, slowly and obviously be very, very careful. You just want to find some temperatures that work. So for placing solder, I usually have it I've found about 653 works really well, and some sort of chisel tip that's flat on the end. This one's kind of worn down quite a bit. Probably about time to change that. And just be very careful because obviously it's hot, and to clean it up, a little wet sponge will work very nicely just to wipe that little bit of solder right off the tip. That way you don't have a bunch of excess stuff going on. So I'm going to finish up these last couple solders here. Just wanted to go over that, at least do a quick pass on placing and removing solder, though I'll probably do a more thorough tutorial on it some point later. But it showed up in this project, so I wanted to include it.